Good morning, Neelan or Wardu, the two of you that have joined. How are you doing?
Hi, sir, I'm doing fine, thank
You feel like I feel on a Monday morning. Could the weekend have been one extra day, eh?
you. Yes, sir.
Or what do the group doesn't have classes on a Monday, am I right?
We do have classes, but it only starts at 1:20.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was the motivation for us scheduling a preparation session on a Monday because it's probably it's less interruptive with your normal program. Just for and okay, right, we've got some more people joining. I'll give it a minute before I go into what I've prepared for today. And main reason for that is usually when I get up in the morning, I get up rather early. I do a preparation for the day. 6 o'clock, I wake my boys to take them to school or to get ready for school, and I wake up a copy watch ENCA, which is one of our news stations, local news stations, and for as long as I can remember, the clock that they have on the screen and the clock I have on my television and on my laptop and on my phone is a specific time. And usually, the breakfast show that they have on telly is sort of a minute ahead. This morning, it was like 5 minutes behind. I thought, where did I lose 5 minutes on a weekend? So just for the sake of ensuring that everybody has a fair opportunity to join, because it is in the hi Pundi, thanks for joining. It is an important session. It is recorded. We've started the recording already. It will be uploaded onto Canvas for you. And just before we enter into what I've planned for today, um, I want to make sure that we start off on the same page, and that being what you expect from today's session, and then I'll tell you what will be offered for today's session to make sure that all the expectations, realistic expectations of you, the students, have been addressed. Right. Anybody, what do you expect to get from today's session? What would you like to to um, to get from today's session? Accept the memo. Anybody? You guide
So
me. Sorry.
my, maybe how the questions will be set up.
Sure, no problem. That'll definitely be addressed. Anybody else who had any specific expectations or anything you want from today's session that you think, wow, okay, right. After I finish today's session, and that's the idea of when you finish today's session, might take an hour, might take an hour and a half. I doubt it will take longer than an hour and a half, but I'm not going to put a time limit on this. Obviously, we can't do it indefinitely, but I want you to leave today feeling okay, less anxiety, less anxious, greater clarity before the supplementary exam next week. Is that what you sort of anticipated to, and is that something that we can work towards? Because that's where I want you to be at the end of today's session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good then. Right. Um, Usually with my normal classes, I start off with a good news, bad news session on a Monday, but at the moment, the good news is that more than 7 million South Africans have been vaccinated. We're all moving towards the right direction. We're on level 2. It looks as if we behave ourselves. Summer will be open, unlike 2020. So it's something to look forward to. But for you to enjoy summer in a fashion it should be enjoyed, as a celebration of life. Secondly, of a reward for all the what you've sacrificed during the year. And regardless of where we are and what we've achieved so far and what we still have to achieve, when we get to end of the year, when we get to end of November, and we enter into the summer break, we want to reward ourselves and we want to celebrate the achievements that we've made. I want you to obviously add MMB12 business marketing as one of those celebrations. I think if I reflect back on semester one of the big challenges I think we all faced was the fact that it is a lot of work. It is a massive step up from what you've been exposed to in over 12 years at school, and especially in grade 12. And in the light of that, I thought, you know what, the most important part of today's session for me, or most important message for today's session, would be to give yourself an overview of where we are, because it's always, or what this module is about. If we understand where we're going and where we need to end up, it makes the whole journey so much easier. If you know exactly, or let me, and I've probably used this example in class in the first semester before. If you have to travel from Cape Town to Johannesburg, or from Gauteng down to Cape Town, there are many ways that you can get there. Some people will take a longer trip, some take a shorter trip, some will take a different means of transport, but you are going to get there. There are a few things that's going to determine when you get there and how urgently you need to get there. And that is part of our journey through business marketing as well. We all get to the end destination. We all get there in different ways. People are different. People study in different, use different study methods. All of you have different circumstances, which are all affect, or which all affect how we prepare ourselves for an exam. Some face more challenges than others. The long and the short of it is, when we get to the starting block, which is next Monday, when you're going to do your supplementary exam, we want you to be ready. We want you to be ready as Bruce Fordyce was when he won 9 Comrades marathons in a row in the 80s. We want you to be ready like a team is ready when they play the World Cup final. There will be a winner, there will be a loser, but both teams have prepared to the best they can. And that's all we can expect to do. Right. Having said that, let me progress to the next slide. The next slide is just going to provide you. Can everybody see the slide that says guidelines? Thumbs up would be good. Thank you very much, Alwanda. This you'll also see on your front page when you actually start the exam. There's no changes in the format of how the exam is going to be conducted as when you wrote your exam in June. It's going to be online. It's going to be closed book. You will be invigilated via Teams. Those things are all administered by Stadio and Mrs. Kukamu specifically, because the rest of us are obviously continuing with our lectures for the day. It's again going to, as I said, being a closed book, it's again going to be a 3-hour paper. It's again going to be 100 marks. The composition of the paper is exactly the same as you previously wrote. There will be multiple choice. There will be true and false. There will be matching answers. Match column A with column B. Match the concept I give you with the best description that's provided from the choices that's given to you. There will be short paragraph questions, also referred to as short essay questions. In other words, name 5 steps in, for instance, the decision-making process, and that will be that requires you to name 5 steps. For instance, for me, I can also ask name the steps and describe each. That will qualify as a short paragraph question where the answers that you are required to provide me is not just a one sentence or one word answer. And then there will be a case study included as well. And the questions will be related to the case study, and any examples that you are expected to provide to apply the concepts that is asked in the question, that needs to be related to the case study. Case study is a case study on a product that most of us are aware and most of us use or on a daily basis. Okay, more about that in a short while. Also, take note, like you have previously for your exam, you only have the one attempt. I have gone through the paper again this morning myself, just to double check. Time is not going to be an issue. Time becomes an issue when you answer your questions, and the question, for instance, requires you to name 5 steps, and then you give me the 5 steps, you describe the 5 steps, you give an example of each of the steps, then you've wasted time because the question itself was just to name them. We'll get to that later on. I've made a specific section for today where I'm addressing common mistakes that were made during your formal test, during your exam, and recommendations on how it can be addressed. Just some tips to help you to prepare better for similar questions in your supplementary exam. Right. The drill is exactly the same. If you have a problem, if there's any load shedding, and lo and behold, I cross my fingers, I'm not going to mention the name of that parastatal that we all are aware of, but apparently there was a fire at one of the substations again over the weekend. It might impact on the electricity supply that they can offer. So there's a possibility of load shed. If anything like that happens, please, and I've said to you before the previous exam as well, write that 086 number down. Don't send an email. People don't sit in front of the screen and watching for emails coming in. They'll check the emails maybe on every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes. But the 0860-905-7464 number gets you directly to technical assistance. Log it if there's an issue. I know for a fact my son wrote an exam himself. He stormed into my office and he said, Dad, the power just, I said, I know, I'm also busy, so I also had the interruption. But Canvas saves it. Don't worry about it. Canvas saves it, but it's still important for you to notify us if there's any challenges. But lo and behold, let's hope for the best and that it won't affect us. Let's be very positive but in case, and we have to prepare for all probabilities, there is the important number, and write it down on a notepad. Write it down somewhere. Save it on your phone. Because when the power's off, you can't go into these documents. You can't go back onto the screen to see what the number is. Okay. Right. Also make sure the first question again, the format for the second semester will change, but the format for your supplementary is exactly the same. Your first question counts no marks, but you have to click yes on the options provided that you have read and understood the rules and that you declare to abide by them. This is what the declaration looks like. It's again nothing unfamiliar that you haven't seen previously. So the format on Canvas is going to be exactly the same. Your introduction page, that gives you all the information that I've showed you there on the previous one, you will see as well. You will have a question 1, which is your declaration, where you click yes, and then we advance into the paper itself. Now, what I decided to do is, like I said earlier on when we started, if we know where we have to be, it's much easier to plan how to get there. The reason why I did a module overview is to give you a helicopter's view, a bird's eye view of the entire program. The chapters that you cover or that you have to prepare, unfortunately, are all the chapters that we've done. If you expected today to get a scope in preparation for your supplementary, that's not going to happen. We don't provide scopes. We provide you with guidelines and tips on how to prepare better for the exam and how to actually do the exam better. And then your results will obviously hopefully be better as well. Now, allow me a couple of minutes so I can go through the overview with you. At any point, raise your hand or just say, or just interrupt me. But let's address the questions as they pop up, as opposed to leaving it right till the end. Okay, because sometimes you think of something now, you want to ask it, you don't, but you also forget to write it down. And then by the end, when there are questions and opportunities for questions, then you forgot what you wanted to ask. You know that you want to ask something, but you forgot what you wanted to ask. Right. So the reason why I've decided on the overview is because if you look at the entire course, it's a lot of work. It's more than yes. I think this textbook is what way over 600 pages. So how do we most effectively cover all the pages that's relevant to us? Because we haven't done all the chapters in the textbook. Chapter 5, for instance, chapter 12 and chapter 14 out of the first 15 are not part of your preparation for the supplementary. It wasn't part of the preparation for the exam in June either. Right. Let's try and get a chronological order and see how things go. And I will highlight from each chapter the aspects that form the backbone of that chapter. We started off with chapter 1, where we looked at an overview of marketing, what marketing is, different definitions. But the essence of chapter 1 dealt with the different marketing orientations, also called the different marketing philosophies. You have to understand what the differences between the different marketing orientations are. We've got your product orientation, your production orientation, your sales orientation, your customer orientation, and societal marketing orientation. We have to look at, you have to have a clear understanding of basically a one sentence or a two sentence explanation of each of these orientations. That's very important because your marketing orientations determine how your management in your company look at marketing as a function within the company. If it's a production orientation, you know that they are going to be producing at maximum capacity that they can, regardless of the needs of the customer, as opposed to the other extreme, which is your marketing or customer orientation, where the customer is the important important component of the equation. What's the customer's needs? Right. Let's make a product that can satisfy that need. We will not have any stock left over, and we will also satisfy the customer's needs because we are providing him or her with a product that satisfies that need. So chapter 1, we started off and say, right, what are the different approaches, also called the different philosophies, also called the different orientations that a company can have towards the marketing activities in a business. Then, in what environment are we as a business going to function and operate? We basically, and importantly, on page 42 in your textbooks, I said to you during the course of the semester, I repeated it in your preparation for your exam in June, and I'm going to repeat it again. The entire chapter 2 is summarized by what we find in figure 2.1 on page 42 in your textbooks. It's very clear that, or you have to be very clear, that there is an internal environment and an external environment in which your business operates. Both the internal and external environment is going to influence how your business conducts its marketing activities and how successful they are in achieving their objectives. The internal environment refers to those things that you can control. It includes your own marketing strategies, your marketing mix, which basically is the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, promotion, and place. Also, it includes your mission, your vision. Later on, when we do strategies, no, it's also in chapter 2. I stand to be corrected. It's also in chapter 2. Part of your internal environment is obviously to understand what the difference is between the objectives of the company, the strategies, and the tactics. With objectives, basically indicate what they want to achieve, what's the legacy that they want to create, what is the main purpose why they started the business. It directly links with your mission and vision of a business. The strategies is what we are going to do in year 1, in the first 3 years, in the first 5 years to achieve those objectives. Our tactics are what we're going to do every single day of every week, of every month, to ensure that we do follow our strategies. Yes, it might change because circumstances change. Classic example is usually sport, a team sport, where there's a specific tactic. When United plays Man City, the tactics are completely different. When United play Liverpool, or they play Arsenal, or they play Chelsea, the strategy is going to be is still the same. We play according to our strengths. We want to win the game. That's the objective. The tactics might change if we see that maybe they close the speed that our team has on the right flank, and therefore they isolate us, so we can't get to our strengths. We need to change the tactics. It's exactly the same in business. So think of examples in the fields that you are passionate about when you try and master these concepts. But it's quite clear that your objectives is the main thing that you want to achieve, because that's going to ensure that your business is successful. Maybe it's a 50% market share. Maybe it's an annual increase of 5% in your turnover, or maybe a 2% in your profit, your net profits. The strategies that you need to put in place to ensure that you achieve that would obviously depend on the resources that you have available. And then obviously the tactics. What are you going to do every single day of the week to ensure that you actually achieve that? People, it's like it's baby steps. The reason why I've done the overview as well is if you want to cover the 625 pages of this textbook, or excuse me, not necessarily all of those pages, but the chapters that's relevant for your exam, you need to take it in baby steps. What are you going to do for the rest of the week so you are at the starting line next Monday when you write your test, that you feel, I couldn't prepare better. This is the best I've ever prepared for an exam. That in, if I can use that example, next Monday is your supplementary exam. The objective is to pass it. What's your strategy in this week? What do you need to do today, tomorrow, Wednesday, every day to ensure that you are successful in passing the test the exam next Monday? Okay, apply it to anything. That's internal. You can control that. I can't control how much time you have. There are, however, external factors that impact on how our business does and also on how we prepare for next week's exam. Those external factors are what we find in the external environment. We cannot control them. We can influence some of them. The ones that we find in our external environment basically has a market environment, and it also has a macro environment. The market environment, to a certain extent, we can still influence. Those are our competitors, our consumers, our intermediaries in the distribution channels. But we cannot control the politics. We cannot control technology. We cannot control the economy. We cannot control people's social behaviors. We cannot control the legal aspects that's passed on through legislation. But all of those still have an impact on our business, and the impact that it has, we have to be prepared for. Because we cannot control it, doesn't mean we can just look the other way. We still have to prepare for them, and that's where we do our pestle analysis and we do our SWOT analysis so we can address each of those aspects. Look again at figure 2.1 on page 42. I think it's also an image in chapter 2 in your slides. It's very important because that gives you a bird's eye view of the environment in which your business operates internally and externally. Right. Now, as I said now in figure 2.1, you have in your external environment, you have your market environment and you have your macro environment. Your market environment includes the competitors. It includes the consumers, your customers, your potential customers. That's what we deal with in chapter 3 and chapter 4. Chapter 3, we look at the customer. What makes the customer behave the way they do? What are the steps in the consumer decision-making process? What does the customer, what's the process that's followed before a customer buys a product? What are the factors that can influence the customer making a specific decision? The culture that they are born into, the reference groups that they belong to, family, their social class, what they do as a career, what their professions are. Those are all aspects, people, that impact on the decisions that consumers make. If you have money, you have more choices because you can choose a cheaper product, a not so a middle of the range product, or an expensive product. If you don't have the money, you're limited to the cheaper options. So those factors influence how the decisions are made by our consumers, by you, the customer. That's what chapter 3 is about. Now, we can just sit back and say, okay, right now we understand sort of what the consumer wants, and we're going to produce a product that will satisfy that need, because that remains the main objective of our marketing efforts. Identifying the customer's needs, keeping the customer satisfied. If they are satisfied, they're going to come back to us, so we retain the customer. If they come back and they come back and they come back again because our service is good, they'll become loyal customers, and we want loyal customers. But we have to look at what our competitors do as well. We can't control what they do, but we can We can take into consideration what they do and how it impacts on our business. It can help us to change our strategies according to what the customer, according to what the consumer, according to what the competitors do. No, but because we know what they do, we can put a counter in place. Again, I use the sport analogy. Your opposition came up with a tactic that countered your strength. Well, what do? You sit back? No. You put a different strategy in place, a plan B, a plan C, because you have studied your competitors and you know what they are capable of doing. You still want to play according to your strengths, yes, but cannot exclude the strengths of your competitors. This is part of what you've done in chapter 2 in your SWOT analysis. The weaknesses and the threats, my apologies, the opportunities and the threats, external components. We can't control them, but we can influence them. We can influence how we react on opportunities that is available to us. We can see what the threats are that our competitors are offering us, and we can prepare for that. So anything in your external environment that you cannot control, like your competitors, you have to ensure that you have a plan in place to counter that. In chapter 6 and 7, we're looking at segmenting the market, targeting a specific section of that market or sections, depending on your capability of your business, and positioning yourself according to your competitors. There are different strategies on how to position yourself. Are you going to go directly head to head with your competitors? On the weekend before South African rugby team, the Springboks, played against Australia, everybody says, but South Africa is very physical. We all expect to be physical. And I'm pretty sure in the Australian cloakroom, they said, but if they're going to be physical, the only way that we can stay in this game is to try and match their physicality. That's like positioning yourself in the market. You can position yourself right next to the strengths of your competitor. You can actually choose a different positioning strategy. But important people in chapter 6 and 7, and that's part of the mistakes that are picked up during your formal test and during your exam. We say basis for segmentation and we say criteria for segmentation. Just make sure that you understand the difference between those. Firstly, you have to understand what segmentation and targeting and positioning is. Right. Segmentation is when you take the entire market, everybody that has the ability to purchase the products that you are offering, and you break them up into smaller groups where they have similar needs and they have similar characteristics and similar behaviors, because the chances that you'll be more successful and not wasting time and wasting resources if you target the correct markets is going to increase the success of your business. Targeting means out of all those segments that you've identified, and the basis for segmentation could be demographics, psychographics, geographical, the benefits that the customers get from the products. Those are all possible basis for segmentation, people. Positioning is where you position yourself in the market based on the segments that you have decided to target in relation to your opposition. We're halfway through this. Everybody still clear? Is it giving you a better idea? Are we all good?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Right. Now, I've also said to you that, well, let's refresh. Can you still recall? I mentioned it earlier this morning, and you should know it by now, the 4 P's of the marketing mix. What's the 4 P's of the marketing mix? Yo.
Isn't it the product, price, promotion, and price?
Yep. That's the one, or those are the ones. Now, that's what the following chapters is about. Product. Chapter 10, marketing distribution. That's promotion. How are you going to get your products from the factory to the consumer? How are you going to tell them where it is? Marketing communication, chapter 11. The price of the product. Those are the 4 P's, people. Chapter 8 and 9 deals with the products. A, decisions on what your product is going to be, right? And then if there's new products that's going to be developed, and you'll see in your textbooks as well, the first 7 chapters up to positioning, that is section 1 or part 1 of your textbook. That's preparing you to do business, because you're going to do business when you start applying the marketing mix. Chapter 8 and 9, product. Chapter 10, place, distribution. 11, promotion. 4th P, price, chapter 13. So from chapter 8 to 13 deals with the 4 P's of the marketing mix individually. In chapter 8 and chapter 9, we deal with the product. Now, in chapter 8, there are different product levels. There are different types of products. You've got convenience products, you've got shopping products, you've got specialty products, you've got unsought products. You have to understand what each of those are. You have to also understand that there are different levels of different product levels. There's 5. Can anybody tell me what they are? Okay. Side note to yourself, make sure you understand what they are. Chapter 9 deals with new products, because in chapter 4, and when we started in chapter 7, positioning our products, we realized our competitors have a very great idea. They might have a competitive advantage. That means that they're either doing it cheaper than we are offering it, or they're offering more to the customers. Right, so what are we going to do? Well, maybe we develop a new product. Maybe we've identified a gap in the market, a product that customers want, but it doesn't exist. So chapter 9 deals with what happens if the process that we follow. There's a specific process and certain steps that needs to be followed to develop a new product. Chapter 10 deals with how we are getting the products from the manufacturers to where the customers can have it. There are different distribution channels, marketing channels, distribution channels, people, exactly the same thing. Don't be confused. If they ask you in an exam paper, describe the following marketing channel, it's exactly the same as the distribution channels. Okay. In other words, how are we getting the products from the consumer, from the manufacturer, sorry, to the consumer, where the consumer buys it? They are different. And in chapter 10, we're also not doing the entire chapter. So in your slides, it's been made very clear to you which sections you need to cover in this chapter. It's marked in your slides. Go to your slides, visit those slides. It'll help you a great deal as to what is important, but mainly in chapter 10, you have to understand the different distribution channels that's available. What is a there are three different possible options available for consumer goods or for products that you and me buy on a daily basis. It can go directly from the manufacturer to the supplier. There could be wholesalers and retailers involved. Remember those? Make sure that you understand what the distribution channels are about as well, because it's one of the 4 P's. We have a product. How are we going to get the product to the market? If we have a very good marketing or distribution channel in place, and those suppliers, who's going to get the products for us? Who's going to get it from us and take it to the customers? Because sometimes we can't do it ourselves. Initially, Pick and Pay and Spar and these the retailers, they used different suppliers to help them collect the products from their warehouses, to take it to the outlets, the shops, wherever there's a Spar, wherever there's a Pick and Pay. Nowadays, Pick and Pay and Spar deliver, they've got their own distribution channels in place. They've got their own trucks on the road, taking the products from the warehouses to the retail shops. Price. Chapter 13. What are we going to charge? Part of what we've done in chapter 7 was positioning, and obviously in chapter 8 was the products itself. What it costs us to manufacture the product is a given. That's the starting point. We obviously want to make more from the product than we actually have paid to manufacture the product. That's our break-even point. That's where we're not making profit, but we're also not making a loss. But the pricing is as such that the price is always slightly higher depending on what your specific strategy is. How much you need. Some companies have very exclusive items, like a Ferrari or Aston Martin dealership. They're not going to sell 5 cars today. They might sell 5 cars in a month. So their profit margins needs to be so much higher for them to make a profit. So their pricing is structured accordingly. A company who sells bread and milk, they have to sell bread and milk every day. They've got to manufacture new and bake breads every day. They need to get fresh milk out every day. So they are focusing on a smaller profit margin because the quantities that they are going to sell are so much higher. Right. And then, now that we know what product we have, we know that our distribution is in place and it actually can get to those points where the customers can buy it. And we know what the price is of the products that we are that we've manufactured. We need to tell the consumer about these things. We need to tell them about the products. We need to tell them where they can find it. That's marketing communication. That's chapter 11. That's the marketing communications mix. That's advertising. That's personal selling. That's sales promotions. All those different activities. Press releases, demonstrations, handing out vouchers. People, those are all activities that form part of the marketing communications mix. How we get the message to the customer depends on chapter 6. What market segments we have targeted. We cannot get the message to the consumers that we want to, or the consumers that we want the message to receive the message, if you're using the wrong channels of communication. If I'm marketing a product to the age group 50 plus, my chances are very good to reach that target if I do a radio ad, if I do a television ad, or if I do an ad in a newspaper or a magazine. If I want to reach your age group, Gen Zs, even the late millennials, it's going to be social media platforms. Am I right? That's what your marketing communications mix is about. We know there's many options available to us. We've got to decide which ones are the correct ones to get the message to the customer. Because our jobs as marketers are to do three things. We need to inform the customer about the products, where they can get it, and at what price. We need to persuade them to rather buy from our company than the competitors. And we need to remind them that we are still here. You can't just focus on the customers that you want to get. You need to focus on the customers that you have as well, because it costs you at least 5 times more to get a new customer than it is or what it costs you to keep a current customer happy. Right. Final chapter, chapter 15. Marketing in specialized markets. Very short chapter. Basically what it deals with is how do we sell? Up to this point, we have sold products. Now, how do you sell a service? A service which is different from a product because a service is not tangible. A service is also not something that you can store. A service is perishable. For a service to be successful, you, the service provider, as well as the customer who receives the service, needs to both be there. I can't send my friend to have my haircut. I have to be there to have my haircut. I can't send my friend to the doctor if I'm sick. The customer and the service provider must both be there. We don't take ownership of a service. If I buy a ticket on a plane, I buy the use of that service for the duration of the flight. When I buy a can of cool drink, it's mine. I can use it. I can open it. I can drink it. Or I can sell it to a friend. Or I can give it to a friend. Can't do that with a service. So chapter 15 only deals with a number of, I think the first 10 pages of that chapter, as a matter of fact. But it specifically focuses on the differences between products and services. Right. That is an overview of what this module is about. What different philosophies and orientations do management or can management apply to the marketing functions and activities in a business? Production, product, sales, customer, just to name 4. Internal, external environment. Internal that we can influence our mission, our strategies, our tactics, our vision, our marketing strategies, the marketing mix of our business. External environments, we cannot influence to a certain extent our suppliers, our consumers, our competitors, but not the politics, the economy, people's social behaviors, the legal aspects, the laws that the government enforce on us. We have to look at what our competitors do. We have to decide on what markets we are going to target and how we are going to position ourselves in relation to our competitors. And then chapters 8 to 13, the 4 P's of marketing. And then finally, chapter 15, marketing of services. Right, that's what this entire course is about. If you understand how each of those interrelate, it will take you a long way to understanding marketing as a subject. Any questions that you have at this stage before I go to the next page, where I'll be focusing on specifically composition of questions for the paper, the supplementary exam, as well as mistakes that I've picked up during previous exams and tests and how we can improve on them. Kundi, Lawrence, Rasavile, Reason, George, anybody? Cheng, are we good? Any questions?
All good, sir. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, and I think this is the second last slide. I've picked up, and I have addressed it previously, and I'm addressing it again because it's recurring. Right. The test paper, as we've indicated on slide number 2, and by the way, as for those who've joined during the course of the session, it has been recorded and it will be uploaded onto Canvas for you today still. There will be multiple choice questions. There will be true and false questions. In general, most of you did not do well in the multiple choice questions and true and false questions in your June exam. Therefore, what I've decided again is to repeat what I've said before. What has worked for me in answering multiple choice questions in a paper? I've always said to you, read the question, read it carefully, read it more than once, answer it, and only then look at the choices that you are given. Look at the A, B, C, D, 4 options that's given to you. If you read the question and you look at A, B, C, D, you'll be confused, and you read the question again and it'll confuse you even more. Read the question, answer the question, and then look at the options. It requires some discipline, but it does work. There will be 1 or 2 multiple choice questions where maybe you don't know the correct answer, or your answer is not one of the 4 options that's provided. Those are the questions that you spend more time on. 9 out of 10 times your first choice is the correct choice. Why? Because if you read the question and you answered the question, then your question will be your answer will be one of the 4 that's provided. Okay. It goes hand in hand with the top first point that I've made, reading the questions carefully. Then point 1, and point 2 go hand in hand. Sometimes, and I've picked this up from your formal test as well as your exam, but especially in your exam, for you to give me the correct answer to a question, you need to interpret correctly what I'm asking. Important guideline here is to ensure that you pick up on those operative words in the question. Name the following steps. List the following items. Describe them. Discuss them. It goes hand in hand with question or point 2, because usually your mark allocation is an indication of how much detail they want you to provide in the answer. If it's 3 times 3, it usually means name 3 points, describe those 3 points, and give an example of each of those 3 points to get your 9. Always look at your mark allocation after you've read, and that's why the mark allocation is usually provided immediately after the question. So I think there's maybe 3 spaces between the question and the mark allocation. So it's not that you can't see it, but look at that, because it indicates to you clearly. It also indicates to you how many things you need to. If they say 5 times 3, name the steps in the decision-making process, and it says 5 times 3. You should be guided by the mark allocation that they require 5 steps to be named and discussed. To use that as a guideline on how many items you need to mention and in what amount of detail I have to answer the required question. Discuss means discuss. In the summative exam in June, I have 1-word answers to discuss. I've received name, discuss, and provide an example. Then you don't name them, you discuss them, and you don't give an example. Immediately, if it was a 9-mark question, you'd have lost 6 marks. The maximum you could get was 3. And I've also picked up the final point right at the bottom, not just necessarily to the case studies, but in most questions where examples were required. Not given. Most of you who are part of today's session, or actually all of you in today's session, at some point, with 1 or even more questions in the June exam, did not provide examples when requested. I sat down to grade the papers, and I get to a question, and I say, oh, geez, no, student definitely interpreted the question correctly, and I'm excited when I'm starting to mark. And then you've named them, you've explained them, and then you just give 6 marks away. Now, if you give 6 marks away by not giving me an example or not applying that particular question to the case study, students, unfortunately, those 3 marks here, 2 marks there, 5 marks there, add up, and eventually it bites you. They all add up, and before you know it, you've given 20, 30 marks away. The last time I checked, and I'm not the cleverest tool in the shed or the sharpest tool in the shed, I could not afford in any exam that I wrote to give marks away. So please read the questions carefully. Read the questions more than once. Write down exactly, highlight. I actually said to you, I mean, unfortunately, when we were sitting papers before COVID, I said to the students, use a marker. Mark the words in that particular question that you need to focus on. You're doing an online quiz. Make sure that you read the questions thoroughly. Answer everything that they ask you. Because if you know the steps and you can in detail describe the steps to me, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be able to provide with an example. Then it's either you didn't read the question 100%, or you forgot, or you do not know how to apply it. And that, people, unfortunately, is something that you cannot hide from. Not from a BCom course, maybe for a higher certificate course. But in a BCom course, there are going to be sections more so in the 2nd and 3rd year than in your 1st year, where you are expected to apply the concepts that you have been taught. Do any of you have any questions for me at the moment? Any specific question? Anybody that's joined the session late who wasn't exactly for various reasons? I know, Nilan, you've had other commitments. Anybody have any questions? I'm very happy that so many have attended today, because when we did an extra session at the end of the previous of the end of the 1st semester in preparation for your exam, there were very few. There were 2 or 3 students who attended that morning session.
Sir,
Yes.
this might be a stupid question, but will a
No such
student
thing.
be okay if they only study from the slides and not from the textbook?
Um, you know what? There's no right or wrong answer there. It's, I think, um, another another guideline, another tip that I can offer the students. Um, if you only study from your slide, you should be fine. But in my opinion, if you're looking at application examples of different concepts, remember we said, and I think it's a question that was asked within the first week when we started in April. There was a female student in the back of the class that asked me, so is this how it's going to be done for this module? And I said to her, yes. You've got your textbook as a resource. You've got your slides as a resource. You've got your recording of the classes as a resource. I know that I study differently to my children. I used to take my textbook to class. I highlighted in class whatever the lecturer had up on the screen in the form of a slideshow. And then when I got home, I prepared my own handwritten notes from that I've highlighted. Now, I'm not going to commit myself to saying the textbook alone will help, the slides alone will help. If you just study the slides, if you just study your notes, if you just study the textbook, you'll be fine. It's a combination of all of those. If you're under time pressure, and that's why I'm glad we have the session now, so at least you can prepare the entire next 6 days and break it down in small parts. And that's how I would do it. I would start with the slides, but again, some people study differently. The slides is very comprehensive, but obviously the slides is a summary of the textbook's chapters. So if there's information if there's detail, I cannot have a 625-page slideshow because that represent every page in the textbook. Okay, so already the slides is a summary of what each chapter is. It's obviously the essential components from each chapter. So from that starting point, the slides is a very good guideline. But again, everybody prepares differently. The slides is comprehensive enough, but I can't say to you study only the slides and you will pass. That to me, because I also know that from experience, if I was given 20 pages to study for a test, I would read through the 20 pages, and the next time I go through it, I will probably only go through 5. So if if how thoroughly you're going to study the slides, because the slides, as I said, is already a summary of the textbook. So if the textbook is 625 pages and all your slides are 200 pages, and you are going to study 200 pages out of the original 600 pages, the chance that you remember 100 pages is probably very good. So it's a numbers game, and at the end of the day, there is no right and wrong approach here. It's whatever is the best approach for you. But I cannot say just the slides in itself is going to be sufficient, to be very honest and fair, in asking and giving you a one question, one sentence answer to your question in summary. And by the way, there is no such thing as a stupid question. The only stupid questions are the
thank
ones
you,
that,
sir.
excuse me?
I said thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure. There's only one stupid question. That's a question. That's a question that's never asked. Anybody else? Anything else? Anybody? Any particular individual question?
Oh, good is that, sir.
Okay. What I will do is I will, for today and tomorrow, if you have individual questions that you want to ask me, I will attend to it if it's addressed via email. But from Wednesday on, you shouldn't be emailing me anymore. You can still, but you shouldn't be, because you should be studying. My last advice to you would be, and I actually intended to do it, but I forgot to add it to the slides. You've probably seen that motivational video that was done by the commander or ex-commander of the United States Navy, where he said during a commencement speech at a graduation, when he addressed some group of students at a university graduation, he said that there's 8 things that he learned from his time in the Navy. And the first thing, and the one thing that he pointed out, and I think that's what made this entire video of his so popular, is that he said, start by making your bed in the morning. Start by doing small things, because you cannot get the big things right if you can't get the small things right. The message from me via that example to you in preparation for the supplementary is, break those chapters that we have that I've overviewed to you today. Break them down into smaller chunks. Chapter 1 to 7 is part 1 in your textbook. The rest is part 2 in your textbook. Break chapters 1 to 7 up into 2 sections. Break the following part 2 into 2 sections. Then you've got 4 small chunks to deal with. Do chapter 1, do the first part today, do the second part tomorrow, do the third part on Wednesday, and the fourth part on Thursday. It's small little chunks. You would have gone through all your work by Thursday, and it leaves you with 3 more days to go over all of them again, or those areas specifically that you were challenged with. Questions again, if I go back to slide number 2, is multiple choice. It's true and false. It's matching columns, matching questions. Select one from question B that matches question A. Short answers, 3 times 3, 2 times 3, 5 times 3, and then questions from your case study. Okay. Any more specific questions, anybody? What's the message on the screen? Study. Have anybody got any questions that they want me to address at the moment? Anything related to the supplementary exam next week? In conclusion, it's exactly the same format as your June exam. It's the same time that's allowed. It's the same marks. It's the same structure of questions. It's not the same questions, unfortunately. But I'm confident that you will be well prepared. Take the recommendations I've made today. Take the suggestions I've made today seriously. Take them to heart. Apply them, and it should be fine. Okay. Make my work of marking the papers a pleasure by preparing thoroughly, please. It's an important module. It's an important module, and not just to pass, so you can continue with your studies in year 2 and year 3, but it's also important because these are the basic elements, people, that's going to revisit you in your second year. It's going to revisit you, and some of it might have even revisited you already in other modules in semester 2 now. But these are we are dealing with the concepts that form the foundation of marketing. You have to get them sorted out. You have to understand them now in the first year already. So I'm not putting unnecessary pressure on you. I'm just telling you that this is going to come back at you next year, in the next module, in the third year, in another module. So get it right now. Tandu, Adisi, Wateng, Sweeney, George, Leeson, Adisi, Lawrence, Pundi, Waldo, Retabili. Anybody? Any questions? Nilan, you fine?
Yes, I'm good, sir. Thank
I'm
you.
good, sir. Thank you.
Good. As I said, I'm available on email if there's any particular questions. Thanks for those who've attended today. The recording will be uploaded and available to you during the course of the next couple of hours. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy that further.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Try our best. Enjoy your classes this afternoon.